We start right now, this hour in Florida, where almost the entire state is under some form of extreme weather alert as Hurricane Milton takes aim at its Gulf Coast. That storm, now a strong Category 4. It has sustained winds of 155 miles per hour.
The National Hurricane Center says that this has the potential to be one of the most destructive hurricanes ever in west central Florida. Already, it's forcing schools and colleges across more than 20 counties to close, and Tampa's airport will close later this morning. The rush is on, with many counties issuing mandatory evacuation orders. Piles of debris still line several streets from Hurricane Helene. Now stores are starting to run out of supplies. Gas stations are also running low on fuel as people race to get out ahead of the storm. President Biden approved an emergency declaration for the entire state to get FEMA resources ready. And police and firefighters are pleading with residents, get to a safe location by tomorrow morning. NBC News meteorologist Michelle Grossman is standing by with the latest on Milton's path. We have the mayor of Sarasota, Florida, Liz Alpert, here to talk about how the coastal city is preparing. We start with NBC News correspondent Jesse Kirsch, who's on the ground in Sarasota. Jesse, good morning. Parts of Sarasota and Manatee County under mandatory evacuation orders today. Many streets there are still covered in piles of debris, and a lot of that can become projectiles in the storm that's coming. So where do the cleanup efforts stand right now?
Yeah, Joe, take a look around me. This is just one homeowner's front lawn, and this is after he tells me that he paid out of his own pocket to have crews take away multiple truckloads worth of stuff. And this just gives you an idea of what officials are up against, as this is a race against the clock to get everything, or as much as possible, out of the way before the storm hits. And in neighboring Manatee County, I spoke with an official there who told us that as crews have been taking debris away, people have been continuing to take stuff out of their home. Because remember, we're less than 2 weeks after Helene, but of course, it's only been a couple of days that we've really been worried about the threat from Milton. And so people were in recovery mode, and now they're having to make a hard pivot back into preparation mode. So there are a lot of moving pieces here, and unfortunately, that could be literally true soon, because all of this, as you mentioned, could be picked up in those powerful 100+ mile-per-hour winds, and also with storm surge coming in. I'm just blocks away from the waterfront here. With storm surge coming in, this could effectively become battering rams that smash into structures as well. So just a lot of concern, not to mention that it could then make it harder for first responders to get to people in need once the storm passes. So there's just a lot of variables here, and this makes things that much harder.
Hey there, Jesse. Morgan here. It's interesting you mentioned that pivot from recovery to now preparation. I know that you've been talking to people there on the ground thus far. What do they say is their biggest concern as they make that pivot?
Yeah, one of the things that we've heard from people is they're trying to, get things ready. This homeowner, for example, told me he's not sandbagging. He's not going to be putting up boards on the doors and windows here like he did previously, because he said it would basically take an army of people to do it, considering what's happened here and what's expected. Because you can see behind me, I think, along the light on the garage there and on the siding, you can see the water line still, and it's probably roughly around waist high on me. And the reality is we're looking at potentially twice as high of a storm surge this time around, Morgan. So, again, you look at what's already been done to these communities, unfortunately, and that things could be getting far worse in terms of the property damage ahead.
Jesse, we've also seen some concern showing up on social media from those who say they can't afford to evacuate. They need things like gas, a hotel room, food, other essentials for an undetermined amount of time. So what options are there for folks who say they just can't get to safe ground?
Yeah, I mean, certainly something to ask the mayor of Sarasota about for their local plan. But I can tell you that when we spoke with folks in Manatee County, officials there are really, really impressing upon people to heed those evacuation warnings. That's something we hear up and down this coast in the areas that have been called for. That is not something to play with. You should get out. And officials do have shelters set up. And I asked about Manatee County, again, just north of here in Sarasota, and they said that they have multiple shelters open. They have room for everyone who has been called for to be evacuated. And if they need to open more shelters, they have that ability as well. So, when officials put these words out for evacuation orders, please reach out if you're worried about figuring out a way to get out of there, because, of course, they have all kinds of teams involved in their preparations. And bottom line, above all else, and, again, this is something that we've been talking a lot about that is a concern, but the top concern for officials I've spoken with is to get out if you've been told to evacuate. Because, again, guys, we're looking at water there about waist high on me right now. It would be over my head potentially here in Sarasota alone. You cannot in a realistic scenario, probably survive that if that water rushes in. And it doesn't come slowly, it crashes onto shore.
It's interesting, Jesse, because every time we do these stories, inevitably you see someone sort of like walking behind the camera, going to the beach, not heeding these evacuation orders. Are these evacuation orders mandatory, or do people essentially have a choice?
I've seen them called mandatory. I've seen them be phrased as people are being asked to evacuate. Terminology changes place to place. But what I've heard from officials time and again is they really don't have a mechanism to truly force someone from their home. So the reality is that if people are going to stay, and unfortunately we do see that, right, there's only so much you can do. But I would just point anyone who's contemplating sticking around in a place like this to look at any number of storms that we've talked about in the past. It does not end well for people who stick around. And it's just a very, a sad thing to see. And all we can do is ask people again and again, heed those evacuation warnings. I'm sure the mayor will say something similar. Again, you cannot have a good fight against the water when it comes rushing in.
Great point.
Jesse Kirsch. Jesse, thank you so much in Sarasota.
Let's go in and bring in Liz Alpert. She is the mayor of Sarasota, which is right there along Florida's Gulf Coast. Mayor Alpert, first off, thank you so much for making time to join us, especially while you all are really in the thick of things. I know we're talking to you less than 2 weeks after Helene, of course. It caused devastating flooding. Forecasters now say that this Hurricane Milton could actually bring the worst storm surge in a century to your area. How do you even sort of begin to prepare for something like that? What are you telling your residents?
Obviously, what everyone has been saying is you have to evacuate. It is not survivable to survive a 10 to 15-foot storm surge. It just simply isn't. So I think, and I think people are heeding that warning after having lived through Helene.
Let's talk about this evacuation order right now, which is so massive, the largest you've seen since 2017. That was Hurricane Irma. I remember I was there in the region bracing for that one. It was like a ghost town. How's it going this time around? Are people able to leave? Do you feel like they're heeding that warning?
I do. As I said, after being through Helene and seeing what happened, people are getting out. I see more and more people saying, we are not staying for this. And the traffic on the road there, indicates how serious people are taking it. But getting on the road is problematic. But, I think, though, it's necessary. It's better to be doing that than to be in your home and not able to be rescued and nothing you can do and perhaps lose your life.
Can you tell us about some of the emergency provisions that currently are in place, Mayor? For example, for people who are looking for shelters, how far inland are the shelters? Where can they go? Where can they get information?
Yeah, they can. A lot of the schools are converting to shelters and they will be open at 10 a.m. this morning. And they can get information either on the City of Sarasota's website, and the 3 schools in the city are Booker High School, Brookside Elementary, and Southside Elementary. But if they live in the county and want to go to a county school, they can look at the county website and see the entire list of shelters that are available.
All right, Sarasota Mayor Liz Alpert, thank you so much, Mayor Alpert. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Stay safe. All right, let's bring in meteorologist Michelle Grossman with the latest on Hurricane Milton's track, the timing, its size. Michelle, good morning.
Hi there, guys.
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. No, this remains a very, very dangerous storm. We are looking at a Category 4 storm just 2 miles per hour away from a Category 5. So we're looking at winds at 155 miles per hour. Joe, Morgan, this is a dangerous storm. We're looking at life-threatening situation over the next, let's say, 40 hours. We're going to make landfall within 40 to 44 hours, somewhere between 10 p.m. on Wednesday night into around 2 o'clock on Thursday morning. Take a look at this system. 155 mile per hour winds, Category 4 storm winds winds moving northeast at 12 miles per hour, and it's about 560 miles southwest of Tampa, Florida. So it will make its way along that supercharged Gulf. We are looking at really warm waters, record-breaking temperatures, and that's why we're seeing this strong system. It exploded yesterday from a Category 1 up to a Category 5. Again, we're teetering right on the edge. We're at 155 miles per hour. A Category 5 storm is 157. So as we go throughout time here, we're going to see Wednesday, 2 a.m., 155 miles per hour, so still a Category 4 storm. Anticipating that by the afternoon as well. And then as it makes landfall somewhere Wednesday night into Thursday morning, we're expecting it kind of teetering between a Category 4 and a Category 3. Doesn't really matter. We're looking at winds gusting up to 100 miles per hour. As Jesse mentioned, we have debris all along the roads in places like Cedar Key, Tampa Bay. So we're going to have to deal with that as these winds come on shore. We're also looking at that storm surge up to 15 feet. That is salt water. It's a wall of salt water over dry land. And then we're looking at rainfall up to 18 inches. So then we're going to watch Milton kind of go over the Atlantic Thursday, Friday, and then we're going to continue to watch and see what happens after that. Tropical alerts are now from the Carolinas all the way to the Keys. We have all sorts of watches and warnings. A hurricane warning. Hate to see this for Cedar Key, Tampa, Fort Myers, because we are looking at that potentially devastating situation as we go throughout Wednesday into Thursday and then beyond. Let's take a look at the storm surge. This is probably going to be the legacy of Milton because we are looking at a 10 to 15 foot storm surge. As we just heard, that is unsurvivable. You want to heed the warnings. You have to heed the warnings if you're expecting to survive, because that is a wall of water that is powerful, as Jesse mentioned. 6 to 10 feet, that's where we're looking at the red. So places like Fort Myers, Naples 4 to 7. And then as we go further to the north, we're going to see 5 to 10 north of Tampa. Also talking about destructive winds gusting up to 100 miles per hour in some spots from coast to coast, widespread power outages. Remember, it's been raining for days. The ground is already so saturated, so it's loose. The trees are going to come down. We're going to see power outages lasting for weeks as we recover from this storm. And we are also looking at the potential for some flash flooding, considerable flash flooding, and some major river flooding as well. Locally, up to 18 inches of rain in the north central Florida peninsula, where you see those colors there, that's kind of indicating where we expect the likeliest flash flooding. The pink colors, the red colors, that's where we're expecting the moderate risk, also the high risk. The high risk does include Sarasota, also Tampa, and that's where we're expecting the highest storm surge as well. So as we go throughout time here, we could see, again, anywhere from 5 to 10, even 15, 18 inches of rain. And this is across the state, too. Notice it's not just the West Coast. It goes all the way across. So Orlando is going to get a lot of rain as well. Melbourne, a little less as we head further to the south and also to the east. On top of this, we have a severe weather threat. With any sort of landfalling system, we have the potential for some tornadoes. That starts tonight. So notice where you see the green here, that's your marginal risk. So we do have a chance for isolated tornadoes even as early as tonight as those winds pick up, the storm surge picks up, the rainfall picks up, and we could see winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour. And then we'll end it here, guys, because we have that risk extending into tomorrow as well with that landfall. And we're talking about Fort Pierce, also Miami, where we could see 14 million people at risk for some strong storms. So this is a big story. It's dangerous. It's scary. And it's going to be sad. So we're going to continue to watch this before this makes landfall in the next 40 to 44 hours.
All right. It can be a long few days, Michelle. We appreciate everything. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Well, switching gears, we are now exactly 4 weeks away from Election Day as the presidential campaign enters the home stretch. It's a busy day for Vice President Kamala Harris. Her media blitz continues with several TV and radio interviews planned. As NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez explains, Harris is facing some tough questions about her economic proposals, while former President Donald Trump is facing backlash over new comments about migrants.
After facing criticism for avoiding unscripted events, Vice President Harris on a new media blitz. On CBS, pressed on her economic plan.
How are you going to pay for it?
Well, one of the things is I'm going to make sure that the richest among us who can afford it pay their fair share in taxes.
But we're dealing with the real world here.
But the real world includes...
How are you going to get this through Congress?
You know, when you talk quietly with a lot of folks in Congress, they know exactly what I'm talking about.
Meanwhile, former President Trump, who's called for the mass deportation of migrants, is igniting new controversy by suggesting undocumented immigrants convicted of murder have bad genes.
You know, now a murderer, I believe this, it's in their genes. and we got a lot of bad genes in our country right now.
That type of language is hateful, it's disgusting, it's inappropriate, and has no place in our country.
The former president was clearly referring to murderers, not migrants, while Trump is also slamming the Biden-Harris administration over their response to Hurricane Helene, saying they're not getting help to devastated communities fast enough.
Kamala Harris has left them stranded. They send hundreds of billions of dollars to foreign nations, and you know what they're giving our people? $750.
The White House says that's not true. The $750 is only an upfront payment for emergency costs, while FEMA assesses people's eligibility for more. Some $200 million have been allocated so far. Back to you.
Our thanks to Gabe Gutierrez from the White House.
For more on the state of the race, we're joined now by NBC News senior national politics reporter Jonathan Allen. John, good to have you with us. So let's begin with Vice President Harris and her media tour. She's interviews lined up today at The View, Stephen Colbert, Howard Stern. Pretty easy territory for her. She's been criticized for not doing many interviews with the major news networks since the start of her campaign. She did sit down with 60 Minutes, as we saw there in Gabe's piece. But what's the story her campaign is trying to tell with these appearances on very different shows now?
I mean, first of all, I think they're trying to get her out there to address this question of whether she's kind of been hiding from interviews. And there's a mix. She did 60 Minutes, obviously, one of the legendary news programs. That's not what you would consider a friendly. It's an adversarial interview. But now she's moving into, as you point out, this sort of nicer territory for her. The View, Howard Stern, I think both of those shows are places where you'll find people who have attended, Democratic presidential fundraisers in the past. So, I don't expect, and Colbert, for example, of course, is not a big fan of Donald Trump. So, I think you can expect to see her kind of showing off her lines that she wants, making the arguments that she wants, and not having to worry about being pressed on whether her plans can get through Congress.
Hey, John, Morgan here. It's interesting because that's Harris, but what about Trump? Because what I find so interesting is that this race could ultimately come down to a few 100,000 votes in a battleground state. But, Harris seems to still be sort of introducing herself fundamentally to a lot of voters, whereas Trump, to my, sort of feeling, it feels like he's doubling down on who his base is, not necessarily speaking to those people he could potentially convert. How does his playbook change with just a few weeks to go?
Hey, Morgan, good to see you. I'm not sure that his playbook is going to change a ton. You're absolutely right that he, in his rally speeches and in a lot of his other commentary, is hitting that hard base. It's what Donald Trump does at the end of an election. It's his comfort food, if you will. He wants to rile up that base. He wants to make sure he gets that turnout. And at the same time, you're seeing his campaign do things that are more of that persuasive outreach. You see the ads that they're running during football games and during the baseball playoffs. If you're a sports fan, they've been ubiquitous. So a little bit of both. The one hand, the campaign trying to reach out, and the other hand, the former president himself, just trying to rile up that base and make sure he gets turnout.
John, let's talk about election security. U.S. intelligence officials are warning about foreign adversaries attempting to shake Americans' confidence in the legitimacy of the election results. What more should we know about this?
Well, I think this is an ongoing thing, Joe. I mean, we've seen this in election after election, certainly dating at least to 2016. And what we should also know about it is it's not just foreign actors. You've got a former president of the United States who's the Republican nominee for president, who is doing everything he can to shake confidence in the legitimacy of this election, just like he did to try to shake confidence in the legitimacy of the 2020 election and in the legitimacy of the 2016 election. He won in 2016, but in 2020, he had also ceded the ground for the idea that he was going to be cheated, and then claimed he was cheated. Of course, there's no evidence of that, and there's a lot of evidence to the contrary. But it's not just foreign actors; they're domestic actors too.
All right, John, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Well, the Supreme Court's new term is currently underway, and today the justices are set to hear arguments over the legality of rules that were put in place by the Biden administration in an attempt to regulate so-called ghost guns. Now, these are guns that are sold online in kits, and they're assembled at home, which makes them pretty difficult to trace. The ATF issued rules back in 2022 trying to ultimately treat them like regular guns, requiring manufacturers and sellers of ghost gun kits to put serial numbers on those individual parts.
They also require sellers to conduct background checks on each kit that's sold and verify the buyer is 21 or older. The ATF and the Biden administration created these rules hoping to slow the availability of ghost guns. The justices will now determine if those rules went too far.
NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos is here with more on this. Danny, good morning. It sounds like all of this sort of essentially comes down to this 1968 Gun Control Act, but also the scope of the ATF. Where do we stand?
Sure. This is a common dispute where you have a federal statute, here the 1968 law, and then you have an administrative agency engaging in what's called rulemaking. And that's because every federal statute can't cover or answer every question we're going to have. So what agencies do is they create rules. They're not part of the legislative process. They're not even in the legislative branch. And what they do is essentially interpret federal law. And commonly they're challenged as either not being consistent with that law, because they must be consistent with that law. Indeed, a rule only has power through the source of that federal law. So if they create a rule that's inconsistent or even violates it, then that rule is no good. So that's exactly the challenge here. The challengers are saying, you went too far, ATF. You created a rule that exceeds your power under the 1968 law. That is the challenge. And the court will be determining, they'll be looking at the text of the 1968 statute and the rule itself, 2022, and saying, did the ATF here go too far in essentially creating a law that isn't valid based on the original law that gave them the power to do so?
Let's look a little deeper at what the gun rights groups and gun manufacturers are arguing. They're basically saying, hey, we're talking about selling gun parts. That's different from whole guns. It should be okay. How will the justices determine here what the line is? Is this the main issue here?
The 1968 law requires manufacturers to stamp a serial number on a firearm. And a firearm includes, and this has come up in my cases, what's called a receiver. That is a component part. A receiver is basically the lower, you have the lower part of the firearm, the rifle, and with the trigger, and then you have the upper part, which includes the barrel. Now, the challengers are saying, okay, receiver is fine, but what about the little itty-bitty parts? If I get a jigsaw puzzle of a gun and put it all together, that is not within the law. Those tiny component parts are not the same as the receiver, which is a much bigger part of a gun. So therefore, we're not covered by the law, and therefore, hobbyists, people who assemble these guns, we don't have to stamp serial numbers on what our completed product is. It's really just a philosophical argument. Are the tiny parts of something the same as the whole once assembled?
I want to go back to something you said earlier about precedent. You mentioned 2022, but last term, SCOTUS essentially took up a case that involved the ban on these bump stocks. How does that decision affect what we're seeing now?
So that's fascinating. And it's again, also a kind of rulemaking interpretation. That, I would argue, was a slightly easier decision for the justices because the law simply defined a machine gun. That was the rule back then. Is a bump stock a machine gun? Well, federal law and Congress made a decision to define a machine gun as something with one pull of the trigger equals one bullet. They could have defined it by rate of fire. They could have said, hey, if it fires more than 5 bullets in a second, that's a machine gun. But that's not how they defined it. Yeah. And the bump stock does result in a trigger being pulled, but kind of in a superhuman way, in a way that only the Terminator could. It's like if you had a robotic finger, that would not make your gun a machine gun. So it's a really interesting argument. But likely in that case, the outcome, I thought, they reached the result that may not be the right for the safety of Americans, but it is the correct result under the interpretation of the law. One trigger, one bullet. Unfortunately, Congress could go back and redefine what a machine gun is if they like. They probably should.
Danny, while we have you, one more thing we want to talk about. Yesterday, Georgia's Supreme Court reinstated that state's 6-week abortion ban. So we know the U.S. Supreme Court has dealt with this issue. Is this the end of the road for this issue? What happens next? Any challenges?
The Supreme Court has dealt with it, but they also haven't. The Supreme Court did away with the federal constitutional right to an abortion. That does not change each individual state's right to either amend their own constitution or rely on their own state constitution or enact state law that protects the right to an abortion, or does the opposite, eliminates the right to an abortion. It really, truly has been returned to the states in that sense, and that creates a patchwork. So, yes, the Supreme Court's dealt with this, but not the Georgia Supreme Court. So this is actually fair game whether or not this law survives based on Georgia's Constitution, not the federal Constitution.
Danny Savalas making us so much smarter at 7 a.m. in the morning. Man, I feel like I just went through like a master legal class, and you made me way smarter than I deserve to be at 7 a.m.
Thank you. You folks do it to me every morning.
Thank you, Professor Savalas.
No, we don't.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.